Good evening. This is Maestro Cotello with the Dawn of War 2 Retribution Elite Modcast. Today we have a 2v2 on Calderis Refinery. Our first player today is Daniel, trademark. He is playing as a Dark Angels Force Commander. The Dark Angels Force Commander is special because he has two toothbrushes on the side of his helmet. And he is a tanky melee hero. He can knock things down with Battle Cry, buff things with Battle Cry, punch with Power Fists, and be also really funny with his voices. His teammate is Fish, playing as an Orc Warboss, running around in some pink armor. This isn't a fully leveled Warboss, so he doesn't have that big truck backpack, but he can still run around, tank a lot of damage, charge in, be very, very aggressive. The Orc Warboss has so much power to be aggressive. You can really push forward and push your opponent back with him. Their opponents, first of all, we got Torpid playing as the Eldar Farseer. The Eldar Farseer, she primarily fights in melee. However, I think more importantly, she is a support hero, so she focuses on using spells. Many of her spells are for buffing or debuffing, and she also has some that do some disabling and control. And then finally, we got none other than Kvek, playing as the Lord General. The Lord General is the only hero who is a squad. You know, if you get all retinue members for him, you can actually have a 6-member Lord General command squad. 6 members. Nobody ever does it, though, because you need to pay for them each time you lose them. But anyway, support hero has an ability from every war gear, and they're all for buffing his troops in some way. Alright, red team taking the advantage in the initial engagement, pushing back the Warboss. Just as I said, the Warboss is the one who pushes other people back. Fish got forced off, although it does also look like he's kind of getting doubled, since both Kvek and Torpid are right over here, right actually outside of Fish's base. Meanwhile, Daniel's just kind of walking around. He's putting his tax in cover right near his base. I don't know what he's doing over there. He's also got a bunch of scouts that are running around. Oh no, just kidding. Those are actually Fish's sluggers, and there are actually some scouts running around doing a lot of capping and back capping right here, but they are going to get suppressed by the shuriken cannon, and Daniel decides to back his scouts off. That being said, much of the red team forces are still positioned far ahead, pushing their luck a little bit, but we do have a double sentinel play from Kvek. Not too surprisingly, he hasn't gotten the sentinel stomps yet, and he's probably just doing that as a way to save resources for a little bit, just get the units out on the field. He also chose to invest in a multi-laser turret to maintain control of the center, and that is giving the red team an early VP lead. They've got over a 50 VP lead. This is actually just a lot of laser or a lot of las coming out of the Imperial Guard in general, so it's just a lot of range DPS overall. That being said, Fish is definitely answering back with a lot of range DPS of his own. He's got a triple slugger build. It's hard to even tell because that just looks like one big shoot 'em mob. I did call this a triple slugger build, but it's actually a triple shooter build. I caught my mistake that time. Shooters, however, need to be very careful about these Howling Banshees. Luckily, they do use aiming what's that, and then the rest of the shooters just DPS them down, and those Banshees got to get out of there. Do not even have their aspect yet. Torpid, meanwhile, has been delaying aspects because he wanted to get out double shuriken cannons out on the field, and he's got double shuriken cannons. Meanwhile, Daniel's got double Devastator, so we've got a lot of suppression play from 2 of the players, basically from both teams, but they're all concentrated in 2 players, 1 per team. Farseer here getting a little overextended and does in fact go down. Just so much shoot-of fire, so much range fire that she couldn't get out of there alive, and she just got overextended. And now it's all of the blue team really clumped up together, and Fish is very smartly splitting his units. He split his shooter boys away from the Warboss so that they could not get suppressed and then just DPS down the Guardian weapon team. And I mean, there are 3 shooters there. All of these shooters right now are also, in fact, pretty much all of the blue team right now is actually getting a 50% suppression resistance, or at least 50% less suppression, because the Warboss has this boss pole. And we see those very, very bright orange-yellow rings, and those are just giving all of those units that buff. I mean, I want to take a look at, let's see, we got scouts here with 504 health as opposed to their 420 to start out because they're being buffed by the Warboss. Devastators with 810. I'd like to see the tax. Where are the tax? I'd like to see them with however much extra health they get from the Warboss. Of course, I could just do the math in my head. I could look at tax, say 1050, and then do times 1.2 since the Orc Warboss, that's a 20% increase in health, but I'm not going to do that math right now because I would have to pull out a calculator. But anyway, we now have triple Devastators from Daniel, and to be honest, I don't think this is an Overwatch mistake. I feel like I vaguely remember watching some retail replays of Daniel doing triple Devastator play against some people and really trolling and pissing people off. That being said, Torpid is a really, really good player, and Kvek is fairly capable of himself, so I would expect them to be able to deal with such shenanigans. I think they can handle it. We'll see. We've got some grenade launchers coming out of the Lord General. Not such a bad choice. And we see he's kind of taking some long-range shots, and that can be decent for dealing with suppression teams. It's not overly powerful, and oh man, the Dire Avengers set up an energy shield, but it immediately got shot down. And we got those energy shields, which are great. Very crucial to good Eldar play, something I don't use enough myself, because they reduce incoming damage entirely. However, that being said, the energy shield itself takes its own damage, and eventually it will get destroyed. But it prevents your squad that's behind the energy shield from taking any damage whatsoever. And now we do actually see Fish being extremely aggressive. Oh no! And a moment's hesitation has cost him a little bit. I don't think it's going to cost him that much, but his Warboss was going to get into that Guardian Weapon team, and then he actually just hesitated and moved back a bit. And somehow, yeah, I mean, at least he was lucky not to lose the Warboss, but he hesitated there, and that kind of messed him up a little bit. He could have kept the Warboss out on the field a little bit longer. One of these Devastators is... Oh, wow, okay. I thought he was already going to lose one of those Devastators, but actually, if anything, it might be Torpid losing the Howling Banshees, but I don't think he will. I mean, as it is, it's still cutting it very, very close. Ooh, will the Scouts even finish it off? They're going to chase, but I don't think they're going to be able to do enough. It's cutting it very, very close, and they get out of there with 3 hit points. I actually think it would have been worth the while of the... You know, it's tough. I'm not sure. I was wondering if maybe the Shooter Boys should have forced melee instead of just shooting, and that's a tough call, because the Shooter Boys, of course, when you retreat, you get I believe it's an 80% damage resistance to ranged weapons, but a 30% increased vulnerability to melee. So you just take more damage from melee, much less from ranged. But of course, the Shooter Boys do a huge amount of damage in ranged, and not a whole lot in melee. So I'm not even sure, but I wonder if forcing melee with those triple shooters could have actually could have resulted in the death of that Banshee squad, whereas just shooting out with the range damage did not. But Daniel still being pretty oppressive with his triple Devastators. Only 2 out on the field right now, or at least only 2 out on my screen. He's got 1 in base reinforcing. Meanwhile, over here, very unsurprisingly, we see Kvek getting the Carapace armor. Now, this is a war gear that it has been discussed recently. People have been saying that there have been varied opinions, but the general consensus is that it's well, I don't know what the general consensus is, but the different opinions, some people saying it's worthless, some people saying that it's not worthless, but it's just overpriced. And I definitely would agree with that second opinion. It's definitely not worthless, but it is definitely an expensive war gear. It's a very expensive war gear. 175 requisition and 35 power. It does grant a squad suppression immunity. Actually, not just a squad. It really grants you suppression immunity in an area around the Lord General. And that can actually be very, very powerful in certain situations, and I think it's very, very good for dealing with Daniel's play of getting triple Devastators, his kind of gimmick. Meanwhile, Fish himself does have triple shooters, so they won't even be able to use aiming what's that on any squad that has that ability from Lord General applied to them. That being said, oh man, hard to get a view behind this damn crane. But a lot going on right now with some Ogrins getting suppressed. They actually look like they were kind of losing to the Sluggers. I think in part because the Sluggers which lost all their models, but they did have Ardboys activated on them, just making them a bit tougher. And then they just do a ton of damage, to be honest. Alright, but here are those triple Devastators. I do love the sound of a heavy bolter. And I think Torpid's going to need to get his stuff out of here. In fact, something exploded, and I don't even know what. Oh, a Sentinel died from Kvek. That didn't sound like a Sentinel explosion, but he definitely lost a Sentinel. Alright, attacks right here. Not quite buffed. I want to see them buffed by the Warboss to see how much health they will have. The Warboss, meanwhile, also has the enhanced custom shooter, and I feel that's a relatively less common upgrade for the Warboss. It increases his range damage by quite a bit. Really turns your Warboss into a ranged hero, and that can be a pretty nice thing. He is playing against Imperial Guard, so actually that's not very surprising. It can be... I think it's a good choice against Imperial Guard, since the Warboss will probably get stomped and focus fired if you just try to have him approach and get into melee combat. Basically just with this enhanced custom shooter, he's just contributing another 33.33 DPS, which is pretty nice, especially considering how much DPS their orcs are already putting out, and Fish going with a very ranged heavy build. Alright, meanwhile, we've got Wraithguard coming out of the Webway Gate, another pretty common choice against Imperial Guard, which is part of the reason why we see the Ogren purchase, which is probably preemptive to help himself deal with those Wraithguard, as well as doing a lot of other things. The Ogrens, they're going after Wraithguard is certainly not their only purpose, but a lot of things are going on right here. This Guardian weapon team getting way too close and way overextended. Just might go down right here. Needs to get out of there. The Force Commander, if he can chase and just get one more chainsword hit, I think he can take it out, but I think he's just out of range and he's not going to get it. He's going for it with that bolt pistol, but ultimately doesn't get it. Now he needs to be pulled back before Daniel loses track, or he's going to lose that Force Commander. Meanwhile, Howling Banshee's in here, but they are about to get hit by the big stomp from the Warboss. Now fully kitted out. Also got these cyborg implants, and a grenade has really put these Devastators in trouble. Again, I wonder if the force melee there could have been the difference between actually wiping that Devastator out or not. Again, tough to say, because Dire Avengers, another squad that does pretty good amount of range damage. They're fairly high, not as high as shooters, but good amount of range damage and not much melee damage. So it's a tough call. I don't know. I would go for it, considering I keep bringing that up. But wow, we already have a Predator tank out from Daniel. I did not realize just how far he was in tech. And I mean, well, Kvek is going to Tier 3. And yeah, I mean, Torpid's surprised, so I guess that makes sense. Daniel did go heavy on Tier 1, but he didn't get anything whatsoever in Tier 2. In fact, yeah, he really did not get anything whatsoever. And he's actually gone, despite how many squads he has, Daniel has really not invested that much. He doesn't have a single upgrade on any of his squads whatsoever. Not any of his Devastators, not his Scouts, not his Tax, not his Force Commander. He has no upgrades. And now he has a Predator, which was very, very surprising. So, obviously, Daniel has a bit of an advantage, and, I mean, what a shock it was. But, I mean, they asked if they can deal with it, and I think they can. And, you know, even if they can't deal with it right at this moment, they can definitely wait out the game a little bit and just stay in it until they have what they need to deal with it. Torpid could always upgrade to a Bright Lance, which he's already done. A lot of things going on right here. Shoota's getting pushed back a little bit, using aiming what's that a lot to really halt the Ogren approach, and Kvek is going to lose a squad of guardsmen. They have a ton of models left, but a bunch of them are going down right now. Only one hit point and they go down, so Kvek loses a guardsman squad. Kvek is actually in Tier 3 himself with over 1,000 requisition. He might even be working on a Bane Blade for all we know. Devastator Marines in a little bit of trouble. The Wraithguard are going to be a pretty good answer to the Devastators because they will not get suppressed, but this Wraithguard, if anything, just might get wiped here, as well as these Howling Banshees. All of these squads are in a lot of trouble. 70 health, that's got to be some dead Wraithguard. Cutting it very close, 7-8 hit points. And I think they're actually going to get out of there alive, so some very, very close calls for Torpid. And I did not even notice, but the Predator is already down. Alright, meanwhile, we've still got a Sentinel right here, and actually he still has not been upgraded to have the Sentinel Stomp, so he just never bothered to get that upgrade. And we see it only has 700 health. Ooh, I like what Kvek is doing. I can see what he's doing. He's basically he's buying a Lehman Russ from base, And then he has a lot of requisition. He's planning to save up some red so that he can drop another one out on the field using the Lord General's call-in. I think that's such a great idea. That's going to allow him to put 2 Lehman Russes out on the field, which is really scary. The Lehman Russ right now, there was a time when I said it wasn't a very good tank, but if anything right now, the Lehman Russ has really proven itself to be the best tank. Even though it doesn't have the highest damage, the Predators, Space Marine Predators still kind of edge it out a bit in damage, but it's still just so good because of its durability. It's the toughest tank, and it still certainly does enough damage, as well as also with the repair support that Imperial Guard gets from Guardsmen, as well as repair bunkers. The Lehman Russ is just a really incredible tank, and I mean, if anything, possibly a little too good, but I'm generally not one to complain. Devastators get out of there. The Devastators are now definitely getting hurt by the Wraith Guard. Both Torpid and Kvek have actually done very, very well to deal with Daniel's Devastators. Really not letting themselves get too intimidated by it. Wraith Guard taking shots, and that's actually ending up being devastating. One of the shooter squads is going to go down, I think, and the Ogrins actually halt the chase, then just retreat out of there before they lose any models. But they did give up killing this one shooter squad, which only had 44 hit points left. I think if the Ogrins stayed in just a little bit longer, that would have been a wipe. So, pretty even VPs. 240 to 261, but the blue team with the triple cap, but they're not going to hold it for very long. Devastator's setting up, but the grenade just manages to get off. And we do have, these Dire Avengers do have their Dire Avenger Exarch. I believe they can also use the Emboldened ability to break suppression, although they definitely don't have enough energy for that at the moment. However, Devastators are getting a flank, and that's going to be a full wipe on this Devastator squad. They do not stand a chance. But, I mean, those Devastators were already about a third of their hit points. One thing that I've learned, unfortunately, the hard way, is that if Howling Banshees get a flank on Devastators or Havocs, they can actually wipe out Devastators and Havocs from full health with a single flank. So, it can be very risky to get Devastators and Havocs against Eldar. You just really need to watch out for the flanks. I'm not saying you should never do it, because sometimes you might need to, but you still just have to be very careful. Really watch the flank of your setup teams. Get ready with Shotgun Scouts or Heretics to protect your suppression teams. Something is in here. Can barely even see the Farseer right here. This Farseer has the Singing Spear for AV damage. At this point, maybe she would be better off having the Gravity Blade as a way of controlling the knobs. Although that would still be a little risky, I think, with all the Shuda support, since when she does use the Gravity Blade, she is herself very vulnerable, and she definitely has the potential to just get focused down by a hail of Shuda fire when she uses that on knobs. But I mean, Torpid still doesn't have that stuff, so I don't know why I'm talking about that. In fact, he actually has... there are several warriors that he could potentially use to control the knobs, and he doesn't have any of them. He doesn't have the Rune Armor with the Psychic Storm. He doesn't have the Mind War with the... well, he doesn't have the Ghost Helm with the Mind War, although that probably wouldn't be that good against knobs, since that's usually only a single model. And he doesn't have the Gravity Blade. However, he is trading out to get the Armor of the Osirian, and actually that's a pretty good choice. That will help him to control the knobs, probably even better than the Psychic Storm, since Psychic Storm, the knobs can always just break the suppression with that with Frenzy. Whereas, man, Armor of the Osirian, that Time Field ability is very, very good, which is why it's a Tier 3 war gear. But knobs have been tossed by Overdare by the Weird Boy. They also have Frenzy active, but they have been hit by the Sentinel Stomp, a crucial stomp. But this Guardian Weapon team needs to get out of there. That was a crucial stomp to save the Guardian Weapon team. But Torpid just does not react, and he loses that Guardian Weapon team. I was gonna say, I mean, that stomp, those knobs should have killed the Guardian Weapon team, and then they shouldn't have when the Sentinel Stomp, but then they did anyway. Guardsman Squad does not get out of there, just gets chased, I think actually mostly by the Warboss, who has actually switched out that Enhanced Custom Shooter for the Power Claw. And usually you do see players actually ending up switching back to the Power Claw, even if they do choose to get just another weapon warrior for the Warboss. Now, Kvek is saying, do you defecate resources? And what I think he's referring to is Daniel, between the Predator, the Land Raider Redeemer, and as well as some Assault Terminators that we can't even see in the unit panel. So where are those Assault Terminators? They're right here. They're now in a huge amount of trouble against Howling Banshees, overextended. And I was going to say I'm surprised the Howling Banshees are not chasing, but that's because they could potentially wipe this tack squad, and I think they will, in fact. It's going to be a very close call, but they do wipe the tack squad. Oh my god. Kvek now has 3 tanks, 3 Lehman Russes. Look at that, you know, this is something I gotta say. I really like Dawn of War 2. I did not care for Dawn of War 1 that much. And I know that one of the things that people don't like about Dawn of War 2 is that it really is it's generally a very small scale game. And for the most part, you wouldn't see this procession of tanks. And finally actually seeing it really is awesome. I really want to see that 4th one come out on the field. That being said, Kvek is also going to need he's definitely going to need a repair bunker. Like a single squad of guardsmen won't do it, and I think even if he gets a squad of guardsmen, he won't be able to upgrade them to have any extra members beyond. Maybe he can get the sergeant, but I don't even think so. So triple tanks right here. He could also, I think, maybe afford to, I was going to say maybe get some upgrades for them, but he's getting out that last tank and he doesn't really have resources to get any upgrades. But man, everything right now is retreating to this Land Raider Redeemer. Both players are retreating to it, and that's really crazy. I mean, like, look at how tough they're going to be. Just between the extra health they're getting, and there is another Overdare, but the Seer Council are actually here to defend against the Knobs and the Slugga Boys, so I don't even know what will happen there. I think the Seer Council are going for the Sluggas, and they will probably get a wipe on them. Meanwhile, no, we got a Slugga squad chasing after a Bright Lance, and they're going to take out that Bright Lance unless they get knocked over by a Fire Prism, but I think they're actually going to take it out anyway. Torpid, again, a little slow on reacting to protect his setup teams, and he loses the Bright Lance. Alright, meanwhile down here, a lot of things are dying, and the Howling Banshees came I was going to say they came close to getting wiped. Actually, not that close, but certainly scary. The Exarch got taken out very brutally by the Warboss, and oh my god, what are these Wraithguard doing? They are in a ton of trouble. The Warboss taking out more models. Oh my god, so are the Seer Council, only at 35 hit points. It doesn't seem like the shooters are shooting at the Seer Council. They must be shooting at the Wraithguard instead, and unfortunately a little bit of a misplay. They possibly could have taken out the Seer Council. Here are the 4 tanks. It is a world of tanks. I will always make that joke when it, or that, just that, I don't know whether it's a pun, a joke, or a reference. It's definitely a reference. Just whenever I see a lot of tanks, and it's truer now than ever before. I've never even played World of Tanks. But what are the Terminators doing, Daniel? He's going to lose his Terminators. He teleports out of there. To be honest, Kvek could probably just chase with the Ogrins and take out the Terminators. He could probably chase with his tanks and the Ogrins. However, he's choosing not to do that. I think more importantly, they do need to focus on holding the VPs. Because they've been struggling to hold the VPs. In fact, for the most part, they're just in trouble in the middle. It's really hard to take control of the middle between this Land Raider Redeemer and also the Warboss when he goes with the middle and giving them those health and suppression resistance buffs as well, on top of all the buffs that the Land Raider Redeemer gives, which is giving health regeneration. You can reinforce. I forget if it gives damage resistance. Alright, but stuff coming out of the Webway Gate and also infiltrating. I think trying to surprise them a little bit with the Wraithguard, going to take some shots. They do such a huge amount of damage, and here come all the Lehman Russes again. They all have their default battle tanks, and we also see a time field just kind of freezing all that stuff in place. Well, not freezing it, but slowing it down. I think what's actually missing is Torpid having an Eldritch Storm ready. Sluggas go down for Fish, but he's still got a ton of other squads. Oh my god, this Land Raider actually taking a huge amount of damage, managing to not die. Banshee's getting really screwed again, but they do get healed by some Spirit Zones, and that one tank actually does somehow go down from Tank Buster Fire, because we do have double Tank Busters from Fish, and all the players definitely did lose some things. Kvek is really going to need repair support. He can't rely on Guardsmen. He doesn't even have Guardsmen. Weird Boy went down for Fish. And oh my god, it's only 2 VPs left for Torpid and Kvek. Kvek needs to put down that bunker. He's got the resources to put down a bunker. He should do that. Meanwhile, I feel like Torpid should save. Something died again. Torpid should actually save for an Eldritch Storm, because they're gonna need that, I think. And I mean, it's hard to say that he can save things at this point in the game, but I mean, I feel that's what they needed before to take out this Land Raider Redeemer, but they just didn't have it. And Kvek, oh my God, where's his bunker? He's finally getting the bunker, unfortunately, very, very late. Wow, the Wraithguard still being very, very threatening to that Leman Russ, that Land Raider Redeemer. This needs to be upgraded to a repair bunker immediately. It's not going to do anything without repairs. We got some tank buster barrages going in, missing entirely. But again, we need the repair bunker. He's only getting repairs from there. He still hasn't upgraded. And Shooter Boys go down for fish. He's going to lose another Leman. Oh man, a little disappointed. Meanwhile, we got a back cap right here. Oh no, some back capping sluggers with oh, that's really, really sad. I think that's going to be the game. Yeah, that's going to be the game. Oh, I thought that was going to go on a little bit longer. This was a replay sent into me by Kvek, and I mean, usually, of course, when people send in replays, they win, so I thought he was going to win. But still a crazy replay, and it was worthwhile. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a good night.